Hey guys, it's Claudia here. Just a quick disclaimer. Some of you may have noticed the scratchy noises in the background of some of our episodes. No, you are not imagining things. We currently share a recording room with my 4 ferrets, and apparently they very much want to be involved in the podcast process. So really sorry about that, but shout out to Busby, Lilith, Peach and Truffle, makers of the scratchy noises. Sorry guys, thanks.
What's up, witches?
I'm Claudia.
And I'm Jess.
And welcome to True Crime Coven. So today I have another case for you that comes from near where I grew up.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah, I know. It's getting real hard to stand up for South East London at this point. I really need to get some Bristol cases out there just to shame you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I mean...
Shame you and your family.
Oh, God. I was going to say, I'm absolutely perfect. You'll never find any dirt on me.
All right, Mary Poppins. Jesus. So, yeah, I wasn't actually aware of this case, but I came across it whilst researching another case.
Oh, okay.
And I carried on trying to research the case I was doing, and I was like, no, I need to go and read. And, yeah, I have a habit for picking cases that I'm like, oh, this would be good to cover, and it's not too involved, and then I'm like, oh damn.
Oh God, here we go down the rabbit hole.
So today I'm going to talk about Nicola Edgington. Ring any bells?
No.
Well, it's definitely a roller coaster. So trigger warnings for today's episode are child abuse, miscarriage and mention of suicide. Now we do actually only mention child abuse and we don't go into any particular details, but just to put that out there, if these are things that you don't feel like you can listen to at the moment, no worries. We'll see you next time. Look after yourself. Nicola Edgington was born on September 9th, 1980, the eldest of 3 children, having a younger brother named Tom and a younger sister named Sarah, though I did actually see Sarah called Sarah in one or two articles, but I will be referring to her as Sarah. Her mother was Marion Edgington and her father Harry Edgington, with Nicola claiming that her father abused her as a child, although I was unable to establish what kind of abuse took place and he has never been charged with anything. Her parents separated when she was just 5 years old and Harry then moved to France. And not much else is out there online about him. There are a few accounts of Nicola spending Christmas with her dad later in life, like when she's grown up.
Okay.
But these still depict a father and daughter that just don't get along very well.
Yeah, they don't see each other. He's moved away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fair enough.
Nicola began truanting from school at the age of 11, as well as bullying others and having violent outbursts. At just 15, she was cautioned by police after assaulting her mother with a phone, like a landline.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And she asked to be placed in foster care following this incident, where she stayed in various London care homes. At this time, it is believed Nicola began using illegal drugs, even overdosing on 2 occasions, thus undergoing evaluations from a consultant psychiatrist and a clinical psychologist. She was eventually placed back in her family home as she was disruptive for other children within the care homes, and presumably because she didn't come from a bad home and the system is so overrun. Yeah,
I mean, I guess the problem is her. Without saying the problem's her,
no,
obviously she had obviously she must have had a rough childhood with her dad, but actually her mum was still a stable home for her with her brother and her sister.
At 17 years old, she attended A&E as she was hearing voices and threatening to kill herself and her mum.
Oh, wow.
At this age, Nicola also suffered a miscarriage whilst carrying twins, due to being punched in the stomach by a violent boyfriend. At 19, she was in a relationship with another man, reportedly a drug dealer, and gave birth to his son 3 months prematurely. Once the boy was born, it was Marion, Nicola's mum, who helped care for the baby as the child's dad had been deported. Nicola then married a Jamaican man and also had a child with him. However, once her husband was denied entry back into the UK, he demanded their son stay with him in Jamaica. All of Nicola's relationships seemed to follow a pattern of violence from both sides. Nicola worked many jobs as a young adult, as a hairdresser, a shop assistant, and even a saleswoman. However, sources online also tell of how Nicola would engage in sex work and deal drugs to make money too. And I'm just here to say that we fully support sex workers at True Crime Coven.
Definitely.
It's an umbrella term that covers many different job roles, and I really implore you to look into the term if you're not fully familiar with all that it covers. Yeah. It's a legit way to make money as an adult.
Oh, definitely.
It said that Nicola works as a prostitute, and this is something I also support, as long as it's done safely and of the woman's choice. Often it is the criminalisation and prejudice that makes this kind of work unsafe too. That needs to be said.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I just don't think the type of sex work Nicola was carrying out was likely to have been done safely.
I mean, given her history.
Yeah,
probably,
unfortunately.
yeah.
And this is when people are at higher risk. And obviously societal changes would help to make this safer.
Yeah.
But that is a subject for another day and probably a different podcast.
Yeah.
But just know that we here at True Crime Coven, we do support sex workers.
Yeah.
And whenever we discuss sex work in relation to a crime, we are just relaying the facts, but we will always have your backs.
Yeah.
She was also a pole dancer, and again, a great job.
Yeah.
Like, of course, when you look up this case, the media do portray this negatively. But pole dancing is a fantastic...
Great way to keep fit.
Yeah, it's great.
It's really hard.
It can be a brilliant career.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a dancer, just make sure working at a club or a venue that, like, looks after your safety and treats you well.
Supports you, yeah.
But that's safe for any job, surely.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, you don't go into a job to get abused in any sense.
In October 2005, Nicola's youngest son was taken into care. Her mother, Marion, had contacted social services as she was concerned about her daughter's mental state and that she may be exhibiting inappropriate sexual behaviour towards the child. At this time, Nicola was also convicted of criminal damage to a neighbour's house, and she reportedly threatened her neighbour with a knife too. However, an examination by a psychiatrist found no evidence of current mental illness. A month later, in November 2005, when Nicola was 26 years old, she, along with her siblings, was visiting her 60-year-old mother at her cottage in Ashdown Forest, Sussex, for the weekend. Marion told other family members that she was scared of Nicola due to her past behaviours and violence towards her, and it would appear that she was right to be.
Oh, God.
Nicola, her sister Sarah, and her brother Tom arrived in Sussex on November 4th, 2005, and decided to go to a local pub together. You know, have a few pints, catch up. However, Nicola was soon kicked out due to her bizarre behaviour, and so returned to her mother's cottage, where an argument then broke out between herself and Marion. It is speculated that this may have occurred after Nicola discovered that she had been cut out of her mother's will. She then began a frenzied attack on her mother, using a large kitchen knife to stab her 9 times.
Oh my God.
Killing her and leaving the knife embedded in her body.
That's a lot of times to stab someone.
Later, Tom and Sarah returned to their mother's residence and found her body lying in the study next to the kitchen, which is like my worst nightmare.
Oh no. Also, I feel like at that point you would put 2 and 2 together and be like, you wouldn't be like, oh, someone broke in. You would be like,
they knew.
That our sister's killed our mum.
They completely knew.
Yeah.
Nicola had fled back to London and was now on the run. Her sister would go on TV to appeal for her to give herself up. When speaking about their mother, she said, "Mum was perfect in every way. She loved helping people. She was a wonderful woman and she'd have done anything to help anyone else who needed it." She also stated in her appeal that in order for the family to come to terms with Marion's death, they needed to know where Nicola was. Marion's neighbour, Graham Pedder, told the Telegraph how he had only spoken to Nicola once, but that during their conversation she had admitted to taking drugs and they spoke at length about rehab. He also spoke about how the mother and daughter were not very close. 3 weeks later, on November 21st, 2005, Nicola was found and arrested whilst on a bus in Camden, North London. She was found to be suffering a severe mental illness, having no real memory of what happened that night. So bear in mind, like a month earlier, they were like, oh yeah, she's fine.
Yeah. Also, they just found her on a bus.
Yeah, tipped off probably. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia and emotionally unstable personality disorder. And a side note, these 2 mental health diagnoses receive a lot of prejudice.
Yeah.
And I just want to state that the vast majority of people who are schizophrenic or have EEPD are not dangerous individuals. They are not going to harm you, and I think it's so important to highlight that.
Yeah.
That when we discuss someone is mentally unwell and carries out horrific crimes, people just see these 2 things side by side and they just like connect them.
It's what gets most publicity.
Exactly.
Like this is going to end
people.
up. Yeah, it's the thing that's going to end up in the news, and they're like, oh, they were mentally unstable.
Exactly.
Well, actually,
it makes headlines.
Yeah, if you speak to a lot of people who suffer with these, you'll realise that they have coping mechanisms. They can function.
They're more likely
normally.
to harm themselves than anyone else.
Yeah.
And the fact is, you aren't going to read or hear about those who have these conditions and live amazing lives.
Yes, it doesn't make a good headline.
Exactly. On October 23rd, 2006, Nicola admitted to manslaughter at Lewes Crown Court, stating diminished responsibility. Judge Anthony Scott Gall ordered her to be held in a secure hospital indefinitely under the Mental Health Act of 1983. She remained hospitalised at Bracton Centre, a specialist forensic mental health unit run by Oxleys in Dartford, Kent, with her brother and sister stating, "Finally, Nicola is where she needs to be so she can not hurt anyone else and she can get the help she desperately needs."
Oh, that's a nice way to look at it.
It doesn't stay nice.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, instead of being like really furious with her, they're like, oh, at least she's getting
I think they were being very nice at that point.
PC about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, with a lot of press on them.
While staying at the Bracton Centre, concerns were reportedly raised about her disruptive and abusive behaviour on the ward. She continued to deny any memory of killing her mother and was fixated on making fast progress, rather than meaningful progress, in order to be discharged. But, despite her order to be held in a secure unit indefinitely and despite her behaviour whilst there, on September 29th, 2009, she was released to live in the community with conditions. The terms stated that she must have supervision. This would be from a forensic social worker, a nurse and a doctor. She had to undergo regular drug and alcohol testing. She had to be compliant with her medication, and she was excluded from the area of her offence and from where her siblings lived. And so Nicola was placed in a one-bedroom flat at Embedcare House in Greenwich, London, run by the charity In Touch Support, which received funding from Greenwich Council. Embedcare House provides accommodation for adults with mental health problems, whilst encouraging them to live more independently. The house, however, has no more security than any other block of flats, with a normal intercom system at the front door.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it's quite. I feel like that's quite a big jump.
Yeah, from being in a hospital where you're being told you're staying there indefinitely,
and then suddenly you're in like basically a normal flat with support and terms, but
there's a difference between like needing support and wanting support as well.
Exactly.
Like, if I know they've said she can't live in the same area as her siblings, but we know that she's a wild card. Like,
yeah, exactly. I don't know if she was allowed even in the areas at all, but
but also what's in place to stop her going there?
Well, yeah, exactly. And this arrangement seemed to go well for 2 years, with Nicola's forensic social worker, Elizabeth Lloyd Folkard, describing her as taking good care of herself, having good hygiene and keeping her residence clean and tidy. Plans were even in place to start transitioning Nicola to begin living more independently, with a spokeswoman for the charity associated with her residence stating that Nicola had come to a point where minimum support was appropriate. However, on October 10th, 2011, 31-year-old Nicola Edgington attacked two strangers with knives in broad daylight. Lunging at 22-year-old Kerry Clark with a 12-inch kitchen knife out of nowhere before fleeing and then attacking 58-year-old Sally Hodkin with another knife, nearly decapitating her. Sally died within minutes from her injuries.
Oh my god, that's horrendous.
Well, what happened?
Yeah.
To answer that, we have to go back a few weeks before this incident took place. And just like prepared to be really frustrated.
Okay. Already, I mean, I'm already kind of frustrated. They've put her in a hospital. They've told her she's not going to get out indefinitely. We already know that she wanted to be out quickly rather than make meaningful progress.
Yeah, and then they've just given her that.
Yeah, and then she's gone out and they've been like she is obviously quite intelligent. She knows how to tick all the boxes for them to say, yes, you can go back into society. Yeah. And yeah, she's going along with it.
You're going to get more frustrated. Okay. On September 22nd, 2011, less than 3 weeks before the murder of Sally Hodkin, Nicola last met with her medical supervisor, and they saw no indication that anything was wrong. She was noted as being pleasant, with no irritability. She was not displaying any symptoms of psychosis, such as paranoia, nor auditory hallucinations or intrusive thoughts. On September 29th, 2011, Nicola messaged her brother, Tom, from her Facebook account, which bore the name Princess Nicola. The conversation went as follows. Nicola messaged, "Sorry if you don't want to talk to me. I'm missing Mum bad. To be honest, no one's taking care of me like she could, and I don't think she'd want us to be apart like this." She then told him that she'd recently had a miscarriage. She sent him her phone number, told him that she loved him always, and asked him not to tell their dad that she had been in touch. Her brother then replied, "You stabbed her to death and left me to find her body. Good news about your miscarriage, though. People like you should be sterilised for the good of the world. Do us all a favour and just slit your wrists."
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a heavy message to receive, even after everything she's done. And obviously I'm not saying anything she did was right, but that's...
I don't blame him.
I don't blame him, but also if you know that she's got...
Yeah, like I suppose she's got diminished responsibility.
Yeah.
But then I think if I had found my mum's dead body, I would maybe be quite angry. Also, it's...
I would be... Yeah. I think I just wouldn't reply. I think I would just block her.
I mean...
And be like, don't contact me again.
Some sources, the reason I didn't include it is because it was hard to find like a strong timeline. But apparently she was always horrible to her brother growing up.
Okay.
So I think there was quite a lot of...
That's a lot of built up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That makes more sense then.
Yeah.
Also, she says don't tell dad.
Yeah.
Why? I didn't think she spoke to her dad anyway.
I think growing up she did sometimes spend
like a
Christmases
bit of time
with him and stuff. But
that makes
they
me
just never
think
went
that
well.
her brother and her sister are quite close to her dad still, though.
I don't think they ever had any problems with him.
Yeah.
No. I couldn't find much about her
No.
dad that was so difficult. There was like one or two articles that spoke about her dad, and then one that said that like she spent Christmas with him but it didn't go well.
Okay, so again, more red flags that she is
might
the
be the
issue. Like, there's no issues with her brother and her sister.
No.
Like, it's all with her. Yeah.
Elizabeth Lloyd Folcard, Nicola's social worker, confirmed that she last met with her the day after these messages and stated she believed that Nicola was trying for a baby but had indeed miscarried. A meeting was arranged for 10 days later on October 10th for Nicola and Elizabeth to further discuss her miscarriage and the contact with her brother. However, on October 6th, 2011, Nicola made a 999 call to police at 11:21pm. She requested that police attend her residence as she'd been receiving death threats from people she knew, stating that these people were nearby at a local takeaway and that she had around 30 threatening texts from them on her phone. The reception was bad on this call, and eventually Nicola hung up after raising her voice in frustration. The officer tried to call back, but the calls went unanswered, and so this call was graded as significant, meaning that officers would attend within the hour. Nicola then called back numerous times, once to ask the police to attend immediately, and then again to state that she no longer wanted police to attend at all, informing them that she would instead visit a police station the next day to make a report in person. When the officers informed her that her complaint was classified as a domestic issue, and that due to her history they would have to come out, she became angry and began shouting. The officer informed her that she was not able to cancel attendance in this circumstance, but that she would inform the local borough police. This eventually led to the call being downgraded from significant to referred, meaning that police attendance was no longer required and subsequently none attended. The next day, Nicola did attend Greenwich Police Station and report the threats made against her. However, she chose to only report the matter and not substantiate any further allegation. The Crime Report Information System entry stated that Nicola was difficult to understand and aggressive at times. This report was then referred to a risk assessment team and a domestic violence pack was sent to her address. On the night of October 9th, 2005, Nicola made 3 999 calls to police, this time requesting their attendance to her flat as there were 2 men there that she knew from her mental health clinic who were smoking crack cocaine and refusing to leave her communal living area. She also believed that the men had stolen her keys and were now trying to gain access to her residence. During one of the calls, the officer could hear a male voice in the background and stated that Nicola's concentration was poor due to her conversing with the man at the same time. Her last call to police that night would be to cancel their attendance. She could be heard saying to someone in the background, "I'm cancelling it now, babes." This call was downgraded from significant to referred, and no police attended. Yeah.
At what point did the police see this
Pattern.
and just be like, look, we just need to go? Because
Honestly,
there's
this
clearly...
is just the tip of the iceberg.
Or
with the
even
police,
just
not.
contact... I mean, surely they'd have some form of record knowing that she was... Would they? I don't know.
Yeah, they should. That's
Like,
the thing.
that she's has
But
a social
if someone doesn't
worker.
look it up,
Yeah, it's true.
but we'll get to that.
Okay.
On October 10th at 4:01am, an employee named George Christou from a minicab office based in Greenwich called police, saying that he had a woman in his cab office who had taken a taxi to Lewisham Hospital in South London, but as she'd had no money to pay for the journey, the driver had brought the woman back to the office. George told the officer that the woman was crying and shaking and seemed distressed. He told officers that she needed to be sectioned and that she hadn't slept for weeks and needed to go to hospital. This woman was, of course, Nicola Edgington. She had told George her name, and he told the officer that she seemed paranoid about everything and had been moved away from the public seating at the front of the office to the private staff area in the back. When asked if she wanted an ambulance, Nicola stated that the police could take her, which is actually true. Police can place a person under like a temporary Section 136. Okay. They do it quite a lot at my work. Yep. Yeah, so a temporary Section 136, the Mental Health Act 1983, basically means that the police escort them to hospital. It means they must stay with the person until they are admitted as an inpatient or discharged home. And the police officers, like 2 police officers, need to stay with the patient unless they deem them safe to be discharged from the section.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, the operator stated that an ambulance and police were en route. At 4:15 a.m, 2 police officers arrived at the scene, a PC Phillips and a PC Payne, whereupon they spoke with Nicola, asking her to calm down, reassuring her that she hadn't done anything wrong and that she was not under arrest. They asked if she had any mental health history, and she told them that she did and that she needed medication. The officers then asked if she wanted help, to which she responded yes. When asked if she wanted them to take her to hospital, she also replied yes. This whole interaction lasted for no more than 2 minutes before the officers and Nicola walked out of the cab office together. PC Phillips and PC Payne stated that Nicola appeared agitated but meek, and that she seemed to have self-control and the capacity to understand what was being said to her. Due to this, and the fact that she appeared to be seeking help, they decided to voluntarily take her to hospital and not place her under a temporary Section 136. And I think the key word here is capacity.
Yeah.
I think this would have been a major factor in the officer's decision as to whether to section Nicola there and then or take her to hospital.
Yeah. And the fact that, from what she was saying, she was answering appropriately.
Exactly.
Sounds like she knew she needed help.
Exactly.
Like, you wouldn't genuinely look at her and think, oh, you clearly
need to be sectioned
you need to be
you're
sectioned
not helping yourself.
Yeah. And she wasn't violent or aggressive.
No, she was very
just
calm
saying,
with them.
Yeah, do you need to go to the hospital? Yes, I do have a history of mental health issues. I need medication. I need help. Yes,
Yeah,
please take me to the hospital. She wasn't resisting them.
No, she was completely compliant.
Yeah.
However, it appears that they didn't do any intelligence or checks on Nicola when the call came in or at the scene. And if they had, then they would have been aware of her record, and perhaps this would have all gone very differently. However, it would later come to light that her surname had been spelled wrong, meaning that even if they had tried to check, they wouldn't have been able to gain access to the accurate and relevant information.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the call handler had spelled her name wrong. Anyway, once outside, the ambulance had also arrived at the scene, but Nicola took one look at it and said she would not get in that big box, going on to say that she was claustrophobic, and so PC Phillips told the paramedics that they, the police, would take her to hospital. The officers and Nicola arrived at Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Woolwich, London at 4:29 a.m. And after she was checked in by receptionist Sylvia Rogers, Nicola was sat in the waiting room with PC Payne and PC Phillips leaving through the main entrance at 4:31 a.m. So that took all of 2 minutes.
Oh, wow. So they literally did drop her off.
Yeah,
say,
just
you're here now, bye.
However, Nicola followed the officers shortly after, and they then had to escort her back into the A&E department. CCTV footage from this time shows Nicola speaking with PC Phillips and seeming agitated. Eventually, the officers left for another call at 4:37 a.m. From then on, Nicola was on her own and appearing more and more agitated, unable to keep still, constantly moving and pacing.
When she checked in, surely her records would have come up. I guess only her health records.
Yeah, I think from what I know about her work, I don't believe the receptionists look into that.
Okay.
It would be something that we would, like the nurses or the doctors then.
Okay, so at this point no one would have flagged up anything about her.
No, I think, but we'll get onto that. Mm-hmm. She approached the receptionist a few times, once asking, how long am I going to be here? A very common question that A&E receptionists get asked a lot. She then also asked a likely less common question. Is it going to take for me to kill someone, as I've done it before, so I can get seen?
Ooh.
At 4:52 a.m, Nicola made another call to police. She stated that she needed to go to a mental hospital, that she'd had a breakdown, and that the last time she felt like this, she killed someone. She asked officers to please come quick. During this phone call, she had to ask someone else where she was and said that she felt confused and didn't know who she was, adding that she was on a 3741 ministry section and could not sit in A&E. Now, I wasn't familiar with a 3741 section, so I looked it up, and it appears that basically a section 37 is where you go to hospital instead of prison. So obviously she'd done that.
Yeah.
And a section 41 is a community section when you're discharged with conditions, which is on.
Yeah.
So, we'd be learning. Anyway, the communications officers who had taken Nicola's 999 call decided to phone PC Phillips to ask how Nicola had seemed with him and his colleague, to which she replied that she had been fine, but appearing nervous and not happy with having to wait to be given her medication. And so because of this, despite Nicola herself saying that last time she felt like this she had killed someone, this call was also downgraded from significant to referred, and no officers attended.
Ooh.
And can I just say as well that saying someone's fine but nervous and unhappy is very contradicting.
Yeah.
Like,
also,
to me, there are also two factors there that are likely to worsen and then cause an escalation in behaviour.
Yeah. And not giving people an out, but people do weird stuff when they're in hospital.
Yeah.
Like, they do feel very vulnerable. You do weird things when you're in pain and you feel vulnerable. She's obviously feeling that. She's also waiting for medication that she knows she needs. She's probably watching the clock and thinking every minute that goes by is a minute that I don't have something that's helping me.
And as a nurse, I can tell you that when patients know they need a medication, they are very fixated on that.
Yeah, especially someone with her medical history.
Exactly. But you're going to get more frustrated, believe me.
I'm just wondering at what point someone is like, oh, her name keeps coming up. Do you know what I mean? Like, at work, like, we call them frequent flyers. You see names and you're like, I recognise that name.
Exactly.
And then you're like, oh, how does not a single person see that name and think, this is definitely urgent, we need someone there straight away?
And that's why I think this case is so frustrating, because I've lost count of how many times she's called the police. And we're not even...
3 times in one night the other day. Like, do you know what I mean? Yeah.
3 times one night in 2 separate days, actually.
Yeah.
I did originally write out all the different times, and then I went through and condensed it, because it was just like me going at this time, and then at this time.
And then at this time.
Nicola made another 999 call at 5:15 a.m. where she asked for help before she hurt someone. She stated that she was at the hospital in the A&E department and asked for police to take her into custody, adding that her psychiatrist had told her that when she feels scared and paranoid, she can be very dangerous. Nicola asked communications officer Ian Rigby if he wanted her to hurt someone, telling him about a section 3741 for murder 5 years previously, reporting that hospital staff were ignoring her and not calling the mental health team. She then broke down in tears and said, "You need to send somebody now." This call was classified as immediate, meaning that police were to attend within 12 minutes. However, once again, checks were not done against Nicola's name, and with communications dispatch officer Philip Rico Lloyd seeing on the earlier entries that officers had just left the scene, was also taking into account that the hospital has its own security and did not call for police to reattend, he decided to downgrade the call to, you guessed it, referred, and no officers attended the scene. To be fair, I kind of understand this.
Yeah.
Because often if we need support at hospital, we call the police.
Security.
We ring, we do ring the police.
Yeah.
But I just, again, think that he should have been like, she is clearly in crisis mode.
Yeah, also she's saying hospital staff are ignoring me. She's saying, what's it going to take for someone to pay attention to me? Yeah. Do I need to kill someone?
You would think that maybe just...
someone at that point.
And just stay with her.
Yeah. Also, time frames on this. Very, very short.
Yeah, like she's calling in quick succession.
Yeah. What time did she get there? Like 4:30?
Yeah.
And it's now 5:20.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, in an hour.
It's escalated so much.
Yeah.
At 5:21 a.m, Nicola called police again. She apparently sounded more upset than on her earlier calls, which, considering she broke down in tears on her previous one, I think really says something.
Yeah.
During this phone conversation, she stated that she was a dangerous schizophrenic and that if police did not arrive, she would harm someone and that she was having a nervous breakdown. She could also be heard shouting that she wanted a cigarette and repeating over and over again that she would like some assistance. During this call, the officer told Nicola that she was in a place of safety, which Nicola protested against and stated that the more scared she gets, the more dangerous she becomes. Just as the officer told Nicola that she was going to pass her call on to the units, a female voice was heard in the background, telling Nicola that, "We have got you some help just like you wanted." The call then ended. This was classed as a significant call, where police aimed to attend within an hour. However, an officer decided to call the hospital directly after Nicola made another call at 5:27am, and this incident was then downgraded to, altogether now, referred.
Oh, of course.
Now, in all fairness, at the end of her final call made at 5:27am, Nicola's tone changed. Before, she'd been upset, crying and shouting, and stating she felt like someone was going to kill her if she went back inside the hospital. But at the end of this phone call, the mental health doctor came out to see her, and she reportedly sounded happier and then ended the call. The officer on the line, Bob Shafto, then ran the hospital and spoke with the receptionist, who stated that they were aware of the situation surrounding Nicola and that security have the matter in hand, so there is no need for police attendance.
Okay.
So the
hospital obviously felt like they had it under control.
Yeah, I don't know how, but they did.
Yeah. Obviously, I don't want to stereotype, but I mean, this isn't a one-off for a hospital.
No, we do see things.
Yeah, and very used to things like this and staying calm in this situation.
And also, mental health patients, unfortunately, they do say things and you don't take them at face value.
Yeah, you have to just be like, okay, yes, we'll see what we can do for you. Please just, is there anything I can do? In the meantime...
9 times out of 10, you're not going to believe someone who says they've killed someone before.
Yeah. Especially when they tell you that they've got schizophrenia and... And I mean, she was like, oh, she couldn't even remember where she was.
Yeah, I feel like you're gonna
be like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Finally, Nicola was seen and assessed by the mental health liaison psychiatrist and mental health nurse Hakeem Berapong, when Nicola told him she hadn't slept for weeks and wanted to be sectioned. However, he informed her that as she had attended hospital voluntarily, that she did not need to be sectioned. She was then taken to Oxley's mental health team, situated inside the hospital grounds, where Nicola was left unattended and absconded from the building. The door, which was normally locked, had been left open to allow for the staff changeover. Dr. Odawu called the police and informed them of her prior manslaughter conviction, stating that while she wasn't currently maintained under the Mental Health Act, she may need to be sectioned if she was found by police or ambulance services and was non-compliant with her return to hospital. He stated, "We are concerned about this lady's safety and there is a possibility that she could pose a threat to the public." Nicola was seen on CCTV boarding a bus to Bexley Heath, a town on the southeast London and Kent border. It was here that she went into Asda and purchased a 12-inch kitchen knife. At around 8:30am, 22-year-old Kerry Clark was standing at a bus stop on her way to work like any other weekday. She was in a world of her own as she rolled a cigarette whilst listening to music from her iPod. She told a reporter how she suddenly saw a big girl come towards her and lunge at her with a knife, shouting, "You fucking bitch, you fucking bitch." Kerry's instant reaction was to put her hands up to defend herself, grabbing the blade of the knife as the woman tried to angle it towards her neck and chest. Kerry pushed back to try and avoid the attack and the two women fell to the floor, with Kerry looking directly at the knife being pushed with force towards her body. Kerry managed to grab the blade and kick the assailant off of her, who then backed away. In complete shock and panic, Kerry asked, "You crazy bitch, what are you doing?" To which the woman replied angrily, "I am not the crazy one, you're the one with the knife in your hand." Then added, "Give me my fucking knife back." Kerry obviously refused, and so her attacker walked off, reportedly seeming bewildered. A member of the public called the police, whilst others rushed to the side of Kerry, who had suffered cuts to her palm and fingers during the attack, as well as a lot of distress and trauma. Of course, the woman who had just attacked her was Nicola Edgington. Just minutes later, Nicola walked into a butcher's shop, grabbed a 12-inch steak knife and walked back out again. She was then seen screaming in a car park before stabbing 58-year-old Sally Hodkin in a park repeatedly, virtually decapitating her in the process.
Oh, that's horrific.
Finally, Nicola walked into a nearby shop and told a worker, "I think I may have just killed someone." She was arrested at 8:35am, with Sally heartbreakingly being pronounced dead at 8:41am, just 500 yards away from her own house. She had been on her way to work.
That's horrible.
So horrible.
Obviously, I know anyone can go into Asda and buy a knife, but surely, like, to buy a knife, don't you need, like, ID and
Not if you look over.
money? Oh, yeah, I guess.
And she had it probably... Oh, I don't know how she bought it. If she had no money when she paid for the cab.
Yeah.
She couldn't pay for the cab. I don't know.
It kind of makes me question how she looked at this point. Do you know what I mean? Like, she says she hasn't slept in weeks. She's come from hospital.
I mean, there are pictures of her being arrested, and she... Again, like, you can't not sell someone a knife because they look a bit weird.
Yeah.
It's so difficult.
Also, how did she just walked into a butcher's and stole a knife?
Yeah, I don't know how that happened.
No one noticed.
I think someone did try and chase after her, but then saw what happened and obviously
ran away. Yeah, fair.
Despite Nicola's long-standing diagnosis of schizophrenia and possible psychosis at the time of the attacks, on the 7th of February 2013, she was convicted at the Old Bailey of the attempted murder of Kerry Clark and the murder of Sally Hodkin. On March 4th, 2013, Judge Brian Barker sentenced her to life in prison with a minimum of 37 years. Judge Barker felt that the overriding factor in her crimes was her diagnosis of EUPD and therefore determined that she had had capacity at the time, stating that the killing was premeditated in a way that showed a consistent and calculated course of criminal conduct. He also told Nicola, "You are manipulative and exceptionally dangerous. You made your choice, and the fact is these were terrible acts for which you must take responsibility." And I do agree with this. She seemed to be very clear in her thought process of, like, do what I say or I'll kill. And I do believe that with mental health, whilst it may not be our fault, it is our responsibility. And I just want to say that is a wise old saying from Marcus Parks from last podcast on the left, who I love. So I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah.
But I also do believe that her capacity at the time can be called into question. And I think this can be further evidenced by the apparent delusions and hallucinations that Nicola suffered. According to multiple sources online, prior to both the 2011 attacks and the killing of her mother in 2005, Nicola sought help and support from the Universal Church of the Kingdom of God in Peckham, South London. Now, this church has been the subject of controversy a few times. First of all, it was founded by a billionaire, a guy called Edir Macedo Bazara, and in my opinion, no one needs to be a billionaire. Wealth hoarding is not cool.
No.
Also, Bazara allegedly opposes interracial marriage and stated in 2019 that women should not be allowed to attend higher education.
Oh, he sounds delightful.
Yeah, not a fab guy. Do not do not want.
God.
The church, which began in Brazil, also reportedly has influence over their current right-wing leader, President Bolsonaro. And we all know that church and state should never be intertwined.
No.
Perhaps more worryingly than all of that, though, the UCKG were also involved with the tragic case of Victoria Klimby, when a pastor of the church stated that she was possessed by an evil spirit prior to her killing. And for anyone not familiar with the case, Victoria Klimby was an 8-year-old girl who was abused and killed by members of her family. So again, not great when a church places blame on a victim, especially an abused child.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Horrendous.
Yeah.
There are other controversies surrounding the UCKG, but I think these examples alone show why they're not the most highly regarded. Now, it came to light that Nicola attended this church both prior to the murder of her mum, Marion, and the attack of Kerry and the murder of Sally, seeking help and community, but this was not what she found. And it would only be fair to state that it's not known if this is actually the fault of the UCKG itself, or if Nicola's own decline in mental health would have reacted the same in any other religious building or setting. But basically, instead of religion helping her, it appeared to just do the opposite. According to consultant forensic psychiatrist Dr. Adrian Cree, Nicola suffered hallucinations and visions to grandiose religiosity in the days before the murder of Sally Hodkin. Nicola claimed that there was a 100-eyed monster that guarded the throne of God, and that on Earth it took the form of the police. She also stated that she thought Jesus had come back to Earth for the souls of his followers, taking them to the kingdom of God, but had left her behind, which confused and upset her because she said she loved God. However, her delusions weren't just linked to the church. She also told Dr. Adrian Cree that she loved Osama bin Laden and wanted to bear his child. Yeah, it's a bit of a side.
Literally from loving God to loving Osama bin Laden. Yeah.
Bear in mind that Osama bin Laden, like, she wanted to bear his child, but he was killed on May 2nd, 2011, 5 months before Nicola killed Sally Hodkin. Nicola was also increasingly paranoid, not wanting to go in the shower as she feared being stabbed, similarly to the scene in Psycho. Now, it was known that some of the signs of her relapse in her mental state were things such as paranoid feelings of people being against her. You know, like a fear of being attacked in the shower, or like Jesus not taking her soul up to the kingdom of God, or when she didn't want to go back into A&E for fear of being killed.
Yeah.
Things like that. As well as experiencing auditory hallucinations of God and demons speaking to her. This was all stated in a letter from a psychiatric supervisor in March 2010. Another reason that I believe that Nicola Edgington may not be fully responsible for her actions is that she may have been unmedicated at the time. Of course, there has to be a responsibility for taking your medication when you're unwell, in any way, physically or mentally. But being unmedicated with a significant mental illness may affect your capacity to make rational decisions. So she was on a mood stabiliser called sodium valproate, as well as quetiapine, which is an antipsychotic, often used to treat the psychotic symptoms that can present with schizophrenia. Now, being on these reportedly showed a vast improvement within Nicola. However, she told her mental health team that she thought she was pregnant, and so they advised her to stop taking her sodium valproate, with her also telling staff at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital that she'd been off of her quetiapine for months as well. And people with severe mental illness should really not be unmedicated. It doesn't tend to go well.
Yeah.
And I know, like, a lot of people listening to this will have their own thoughts on medication, but with my own experience of my mental illness, and with, like, as working as a nurse, taking your prescribed medication is really paramount to your mental well-being, especially with something like schizophrenia.
It's like mental health and physical health. Like, you wouldn't, if you had a heart condition, you wouldn't stop taking a pill that was stopping.
There's just so much stigma around mental health medication.
Yeah.
It's so damaging.
It's a medication that you need to survive.
Exactly.
If you're going to cause yourself harm by not being on this medication, why would you not take it?
And just like sometimes we can try tablets for your blood pressure and one doesn't work for you but another does, it's the same with...
Exactly the same,
But it's the stigma.
Yeah, it definitely is.
In reports following the murder of Sally Hodkin, it has always been stated that Nicola was closely monitored when coming off of her medication, as it was known this could be an aggravating factor. But there has been speculation as to how well she was really monitored. Regardless of whether Nicola did have capacity and full responsibility on that day in October 2011, she is now in prison and is unlikely to ever be a free woman again. I do think that is for the best. As we've only really touched upon the tip of the iceberg here, believe it or not. I mean, Nicola has reportedly threatened her ex-husband with a kitchen knife when she visited him in Jamaica because, yes, she was allowed to travel outside of the country while supposedly being monitored closely in the community. With reports stating that this was allowed as her children lived out there.
I was going to say, that makes you more worried for her children than anyone else.
Yes. I mean,
how many kids did she have? 2? And she was trying for another?
Yeah. However,
miscarried.
Despite that, well, actually, apparently they don't think she actually was pregnant. We don't know if that was all hallucination or delusion as well.
Okay.
And I think it's clear to see why people have been so highly critical of the police and mental health workers involved in this case. Because the plan they had for Nicola did not work.
No.
And there were so many gaps and many opportunities where things that should have been picked up on either weren't or just weren't taken seriously enough. And that resulted in the attack of one woman and the death of another. Why was a woman who had killed before, who had no mental health problems that stemmed back to her teenage years, and who was crying out for help, allowed to be left alone to walk out of a mental health unit? Why did she have to call the police so many times to still not be taken seriously? And that's the thing, on the phone call she's literally telling them,
like, breaks down in tears and says, this is my past medical history, this is what I've done in the past. No one believes her. No. And whilst obviously she's got to take responsibility for what she did, and she can't just be like, fine, I'll prove it. That's not an okay thing to do. No.
I do feel like
she tried to stop herself.
I mean, she's not the victim, of course, but
no, but she knew that was going to happen at some point.
No one can say she didn't try to warn them. Not. It's just so difficult.
It is. You can kind of see both sides. Obviously, if I was a family member of the victim, Sally, I would be like, there were so many things you could have done to stop I don't know, my mum, my sister, like being murdered, but then also.
Yeah, it's such a grey area. Where do we blame her and where do we blame the failings?
Yeah.
Well, unsurprisingly, many investigations took place after this. An external investigation into the NHS's care and treatment of Nicola Edgington, carried out by Caring Solutions UK Limited in 2016, found failings in the care delivered to her. No shit. The report states that the A&E department and the mental health liaison nurse did not ensure that the important elements of Nicola's presentation were understood by all. This may have allowed her to be left unsupervised, providing the opportunity to abscond. Additionally, they found that Nicola's potential risk of violence to others in the community was not adequately assessed by her care team, nor was there an overview of how Nicola's mental health was presenting or the changing level of risk that may occur when she experienced stressors which associated with her relapse, as outlined in her care plan. Therefore, the report found that the care team responded reactively to these issues as and when they occurred, rather than considering the overall impact of the events on Nicola's mental state and her behaviour, and how this would then affect her level of risk to others. So, like, that's very wordy.
Yeah.
Basically, her care team just didn't, like, just looked at what was happening there and then, but they didn't think about the knock-on effect.
Yeah.
Additionally, the police have come under scrutiny for their part in this incident.
Understandable.
Yeah. The external independent investigation panel stated that despite Nicola's willingness to attend A&E, there may have been enough evidence for the officers to place her under a Section 136. This is due to the officers having knowledge of her suffering from mental health issues, as Nicola had told them this herself, and because she left the A&E department twice and was becoming increasingly agitated, alongside the officers witnessing Nicola using the dedicated taxi phone at the hospital twice, and therefore, at this point, could have been identified as no longer seeking help for her mental state. At this point, the panel felt it would have been reasonable for the police to detain her under a Section 136. However, the report states that placing someone under a Section 136 is an emergency power, and that whether it is used is a judgment call, therefore can be subjective. However, had Nicola been detained under this section, she would have immediately been escorted to a locked assessment unit within Oxley's house, and therefore what happened next would have been avoided completely. Ultimately, this case is full of what-ifs, could-haves and should-haves. And I'm not going to sit here and place all the blame on the underfunded mental health services and a police force that has experienced years of cuts, because that's the thing. The police service have been subject to large cuts.
Yeah.
Albeit, like, since 2010, so, like, it's unclear how much this would have affected in 2011.
But it would still have affected.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Even if it's morale of the officers.
Of course.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I know that seems so stupid, but, like, if they were like, oh, yeah, well, we've got another call now and we've got to go and do that, we can't sit here and just...
It all affects.
Whereas if they were like, oh, do you know what? We've definitely got enough staff in today that they can go to that. We'll just double check.
Judgment, and they're going to have pressures from management and...
Yeah. Also, it's so easy to look back on it and say...
Hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah, you could have done this and it would have prevented that. But actually, when you're in that situation, I know they did it, they reacted, but you do just react to what's in front of you.
And, yeah, that's the thing. Police have been cut, mental health services are so underfunded and overstretched in the UK. And, I'm not sitting here and putting all the blame on them.
Also, mental health were probably looking at her thinking she was a danger to herself, not everyone else. So they were like, oh, let's just put her away from everyone so she feels
did say
safer.
she's going to kill people, though.
Yeah, but as you said, a lot of the times when someone threatens that, you do kind of...
They did know when they took her to that unit, they knew her history. And I feel like if someone has killed someone and says, I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
Overall, I do believe that for whatever reason, Nicola was failed by services.
Definitely.
In 2013, Marjorie Wallace, who is the chief executive of the mental health charity SANE, spoke in a BBC interview and said, I don't think she, Nicola Edgington, is the only person responsible. She has a very serious illness. I think if anyone is to blame, it's the whole system. Now, with Nicola showing signs of antisocial behaviour in her youth, perhaps she was unfortunately always going to go down a dark path. It's hard to say what could have been. But the facts remain. 2 people lost their lives and 1 woman was undoubtedly traumatised by Nicola Edgington. And my heart goes out to their family and friends, because no matter what, they are the victims here, along with Marion Edgington, Kerry Clark and Sally Hodkin.
Wow, that is
a case.
Yeah.
So you can see how I was like, oh, this is something that I could cover. And then I was like, oh,
there's so many like different routes to go down, and I feel like you could have just kept going with that. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, there was so
Like,
much I still didn't even put in, because there was the arguments of her husband/ex-husband in Jamaica.
Yeah.
There was the arguments at Christmas with her dad.
And it sounded like there was a lot of the time where she was on the phone to the police, but was obviously talking to someone else. Those two men with her, like, you don't know, were they stopping her taking her medication? Were they giving her something else?
And also she states that she stopped taking her medication because she was pregnant. One, we don't know if she ever was pregnant. Two, why did she stop taking her quetiapine? No one told her to stop taking that.
Yeah. And being threatened thing. Did anyone ever prove that she had threatening texts from anybody?
It's just the whole case is a lot.
Yeah,
it's
just
a lot.
I think I feel most sorry for her family, like her brother and her sister.
Yeah.
Because they had to put up with her for so many years.
Yeah.
Being horrible to them from the sounds of it. Then she literally killed their mum. And then to see the system fail her and her fail herself, kind of.
It's just one of those cases where everything that could have gone wrong went wrong.
Yeah. And as you said, there's so many ifs and buts. Like, if she hadn't stopped taking her medication because she thought she was pregnant, if she hadn't gone to that church, would that have had a factor? If she hadn't left hospital,
if she'd just been
yeah,
properly kept in hospital,
yeah, from the beginning,
this all could have been so different.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what she is like as a person, because as like horrible as she sounds, she does sound like she knows what to say. She is obviously an intelligent person.
She actually had a job at the time that all this happened in 2011. Yeah. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. If you have a case to suggest or a ghost story, you can email us at truecrimecovenpod@gmail.com.
You can also find us on Twitter at truecrimecoven,
or on Instagram at truecrimecovenpod. We are so thankful for everyone who is listening.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for your support, and absolutely you don't have to, but if you would like to donate anything to the podcast, you can do so by going to ko-fi.com/truecrimecovenpod. That's ko-fi.com/truecrimecovenpod. Thanks for listening.
Stay spooky.